And I have to say, this is the most innovative church revival that I've ever been to. So I want to share a few words about innovation with you guys today. All of us intellectually know when we talk about innovation that it can happen anywhere. It can happen where you work, it can happen in the shower. But still, we're conditioned to believe that it really happens in a laboratory or at a NASA research center or maybe in a James Bond flick. So we start believing this stuff and we internalize it away from our day-to-day job. But when you really get down to it, the best place to innovate, the best situation to be, is to actually be experiencing the problem that you need to solve with an invention. So rapid innovation occurs best when you can actually build something quickly and test it in the context that it's going to be used in. So speaking of James Bond, this is Tom Chi, a friend of mine, and he's the former head of Google X, and also one of the guys who invented Google Glass. No matter how you think people look when they wear Google Glass, it is an invention that is changing the way we think about industries ranging from medical professions all the way to police work. So I wanted to ask you guys a question today. How long do you think it took to prototype the first version of Google Glass? And you can just shout out an answer. 5 years? 18 months, 1 year? There's someone sharp in the audience. The answer is actually 1 day. And the way they did it was by solving a problem in context and prototyping very quickly through a process called rapid prototyping. And the idea was, can you actually simulate the experience? Can you actually feel what it's like to wear a pair of Google Glass without having to spend months and months fabricating something in a factory far away in China? And so the way Tom solved it is he took a laptop and he taped it around his belly. And then he took a projector and hung it via a coat hanger on his body so that he was staring at a projector as he walked around. And from that, he was having an experience that's actually pretty similar to what you'd experience when you use Google Glass. So that was the first step. They're actually getting closer to it. Another example of the same thing was the Minority Report experience that they wanted to create with Google Glass, where you could actually change your surroundings, change the interface just by moving your arms. And again, I won't ask the question again because you're probably on to me by now, but this took half a day. And the way they did this was with chopsticks and a clicker like this, which they attached to the computer, and through hooking up the chopsticks through a wire, and then to hairbands. And Tom actually jokes that the longest thing that they had to do was find a woman with hairbands in the lab. They were then able to simulate the experience with chopsticks of walking around and changing the presentation right in front of your eyes. So there you have a way, within 2 or 3 days, with materials that most of us would have in any office building, where they were able to simulate the experience of using something that may end up being one of the most complex pieces of technology of our age. And the last example was what this thing was going to look like and feel like on your head. There's a long history of virtual reality devices out there, and most of them are clunky and very uncomfortable to wear. And the reason why we think this happened, we're not sure, the reason we think this happened is that no one took the time to actually put this on someone's head and see whether they liked the experience or not before they went into production. And also no one took the time to realize what you would look like while you were wearing one of these things. And so again, they prototyped it quickly. This time they used modeling clay, and they used a scale to make sure that the weight of the sensors, the eyeglass frames, all of that was actually identical to the weight of the modeling clay. And then they made a series of maybe 30 or 40 different glass types to see what it would feel like on your ears. And they actually came up with some really interesting inventions through this, one of which no one had realized before in the sort of evolution of glasses. For those of you who wear glasses, the weight of glasses actually feels heaviest on your nose. And using modeling clay, they were able to find out that if they made it heavier and put more sensors back here, it would actually feel much more comfortable to those who were wearing it. So just an example of how innovation can take place very, very quickly if you're doing it simply and prototyping very quickly, getting your ideas out there very quickly. Unfortunately, the actual process that we experience every day at large companies, at nonprofits, even for me in the Valley, actually makes us feel like innovation is often slow by design. It's actually been designed as a process to be much slower than we'd like it to be. And the result is that we have fewer ways to learn. There's fewer ideas that we try, fewer things that we throw up against the whiteboard that we can actually test and figure out whether they have a chance of success or not. And really, all we want to do here, and you hear this all the time in the Valley, everyone's proud of failure. Fail fast, fail as quickly as you can. I don't really think they mean failure when they say that. What they're really saying is that learn as quickly as you can. Learn fast. If one thing doesn't work, stop that and try something else. And the reason why you want to do that is that the more you learn, the more you figure out what can potentially work for your invention. And when we do that, we minimize the time it takes to actually try something. So this is the normal flow of how innovation works. You start with the unknown. You start with the problem. And there are a number of routes to solve that problem, or a number of routes that seem like they could solve that problem. And what we usually do is we sit in meeting rooms, we talk for hours, we debate, we argue, we come to a consensus, all without really ever testing out what actually will work. And so we do this, and then we go into a period of design, development, and we're actually putting products out there that are pretty far evolved. A lot of money has been spent, a lot of time has been spent, the love of a lot of people has been spent and invested into this stuff before we really know whether it works or not. The process that we're learning at Monsoon and that we're learning from a lot of our mentors like Tom Chi is to start very quickly, to start simply. Is there an app idea you have? Draw it on a piece of paper, tape that to a phone, show it to someone who might use it, and find out immediately if it has legs or not. Is there a business model you're brainstorming? Sit down, have the conversations that would actually drive that business model between a customer and an owner, and find out whether it has legs or not. You may feel silly doing this stuff. We actually have a few apps we tested. One that Josh mentioned, the BioBeats thing. The first time we tested it, we used paper on a phone, we pretended your heart rate was simulated, and then we actually walked behind the person with the stereo and showed them what it would feel like to have music that was set to their heart rate. But by doing this, we learned pretty quickly what would work and what wouldn't work. So let's think about your awesome idea. All of you guys have an awesome idea for something you're doing right now. Unfortunately, you probably only have a 5% chance of succeeding with that idea. They always seem more awesome on paper than when you actually test them in real life. And the way I came up with that 5% number is that it's generally accepted in the Valley that about 5% of technology startups end up succeeding, end up becoming successful businesses. So if you were to try one idea, no matter how fantastic you think it is, you have about a 1 in 20 chance for success. But let's say you could try a bunch of ideas quickly, a couple a day, 3 or 4 a day, and you could try 20 things pretty quickly. You now have a 64% chance of success based on that 5% probability. And once you get up to 50 things, the chance of success skyrockets and becomes almost inevitable. So how do we learn more quickly? What are some of the processes we can put into place to do this? Well, I've been talking about them abstractly, but here they are in a little bit more detail. So the first thing, and the thing that's absolutely the most important, is to figure out a way to create a low-fidelity prototype. Now, that could mean that you need to act and simulate a conversation. It could mean that you're throwing up something on a whiteboard very quickly, sketching out the layout so you know where things are on an app or on a website. And then once you have that, show it to someone, and the ideas that seem to work, refine them, but not too much. Don't put too much time and effort into them. At Monsoon, we just sketch them out by hand. So we'll make paper and pencil prototypes. Everyone can do this in the company, so no one has an excuse not to. And then test that. And test them on actual subjects, have someone sit with them and show them how they would use this software or this device or this pair of Google Glasses to see how they're actually reacting and working with it. And then the hardest part, after you figured out the low-fidelity prototypes and the testing, is you may have something that sort of works. Like, you know what, the customer didn't understand this screen, but I talked them through it. They're fine, they're gonna move on, and we're gonna build this thing. But it really takes a lot of courage to say, no, that wasn't perfect, it wasn't ideal yet, so I'm gonna give it another go. I'm gonna try something else. I'm gonna try 7 or 8 new things, some of them outlandish, some of them totally from left field, and we're gonna find out if those work. And we're gonna test them through the same rigorous approach we did the first or second idea. This is a quote I'm sure all of you know from Thomas Edison. It's something I feel that's been lost a lot in the Valley lately, which is that people do sort of settle on initial ideas. And this idea of pivoting from one idea to the next, I think it's great as long as you're not investing too much in the initiation of every single idea you're trying. And then finally, once you have that thing, in our case an app, build it, but build the most minimum viable product that you can. Meaning, build the least amount of functionality that would actually give your users some semblance of a good experience. It's always less than you think. And one of my other mentors, Jason Fried, he likes to say, build half a product instead of a half-assed product. Because when we throw in a bunch of features, do a lot of extra work that we think would be an interesting bell or whistle, oftentimes we're losing the soul of what it is we're trying to do in the first place. So very quickly, to wrap up, how would I do this with the software system? Well, if I wanted to design a piece of software, I would start sketching screens right away, and then I would simulate or act out the user working with those screens. For a business model, which seems like something, how could you prototype a business model? Well, a business model is a system for the way things work, and it's a series of conversations. You can simulate all of that. A machine or a device, as I showed you with the Google Glass example, you can model the lowest fidelity prototype possible and get a sense of whether this thing would work or not, and then again simulate people using it, actually have them walk around and experience it. A marketing campaign. A marketing campaign is generally people feeling emotions through a message that you're giving them. Well, you can script that out. You can use things that are very low fidelity, pictures, words, film clips that you didn't make, to find out if they're evoking the kind of response and connecting people to your brand in the way you think they should. So lastly, this is all of my info up here. And one thing for all of you, if any of you email me, I will email you back and maybe even mail you a set of tools for rapid prototyping. We have some great templates for doing this for mobile apps and desktop stuff, and then also some interesting hardware stuff you can try out as well. Thanks a lot for having me, guys.